This episode is sponsored by Moschio Prosecco. Want to sell sparklers and 187s? Moschio has them in Brut, Extra Dry, and Rosé. Look for the 12-bottle party pack.
Staff trainings are key to sell-through and reorders. In this episode, you'll learn how to motivate, inspire, and educate on-premise waitstaff to sell your wines from Sharron McCarthy, who's been doing staff trainings for 40 years.
This is WineBiz 360, in-depth coverage of the wine industry. For wine professionals, by wine professionals. Here is your host, Joe Janish.
Today we have Sharron McCarthy, who is the Vice President of Wine Education at Banfi. Sharron's been in the wine business for 40 years, and in wine education specifically for about most of that time?
Most of that time, yes. You're absolutely right, Joe.
Yeah. So, and also a past president of the Society of Wine Educators. Recently won an award of merit from the American Wine Society for all of your education that you've done for them. You've been inducted into the Italian Trade Commission Hall of Fame, associate member of the Cornell Hotel Society. I mean, we could go on and on with your resume.
I guess I'm old.
No, I think it's more of a reflection of all of you have given to the wine community over the years. So much education, so many people that you've touched and lives that you've touched through the years, just teaching them about wine. And it's just an honor and a pleasure to have you and talk to you about, some things about wine education today.
It's my privilege to be here.
So something that you've done probably 1,000 times in your career is staff trainings, and that can be something difficult for a lot of people to understand because not everyone is a teacher. Not everyone really understands how to go about a staff training. They know they have to do them, but they may not know exactly what to talk about or how to conduct one. So today that's going to be our subject. And before we get into that, I want to talk first about some of the trends that are going on premise and in restaurants. Now, what are you seeing as you go into restaurants and working with staffs and working with restaurateurs? What kind of things are you seeing?
Well, we're seeing wine lists. In some cases, wine lists are expanding. In some cases, the number of wines on the lists are declining. So, you really need to fight to get share of time and share of mind with all of those people who are out there selling your particular wines. And one of the things that we've found is that with the new generation especially, we've always said that facts tell, but stories sell. Stories are even more important today. And we do staff training on-premise as well as off-premise. We'll work with people in supermarkets, stores, to give them a little bit of information. And you know what, Joe? Nobody has ever asked me what the pH of a wine is. But guess what? They ask me what the story is behind that label, the why, the how, the whatever. And that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, we're gone are the days where people are specifically looking for one brand or one type of wine. This younger generation, they're all over the place.
And that's a good thing and a bad thing. I love brand loyalty because we have some wonderful brands. But the good thing is that the young people today are really ready to try something new. They like the way a label looks, they're going to try it. There's a story behind the label, they're going to try it.
Yeah, and how is that reflected in what's happening with on-premise sales?
It's really interesting. With both on-premise and off-premise sales, what we're seeing is that Rosé, Sauvignon Blanc, sparkling wines, according to Nielsen for the last year or so, are really leading the category. And fortunately for us at Banfi, we have in our portfolio 15 plus Rosés. We have beautiful Sauvignon Blancs from all over the world. And talk about sparklers. Prosecco is the big hit, and it doesn't seem to be changing. And along with Prosecco, there's a category of sparkling rosés that are coming on board. So, of course, in our portfolio, we have Maschio, we have Bola, we have wonderful opportunities because the consumers are into sparkling in a big way.
Yeah. And now as we're seeing them going into rosés and sparklings, so we know that's what's happening. What are we seeing looking into the future? What are the trends that may be coming upon us in the next year or so?
Well, they're saying that all of these trends, the rosés, the sparkling, the Sauvignon Blancs, the bubbles, are definitely trending upward. And we still see wines like white and red blends selling because people are looking at not just one grape variety. They like to be surprised. And when they get a blend of grapes, I find that in speaking with young people, and especially young surfers out there, they say that, customers aren't sure if they're going to really like a Cab or if they're going to really like a Merlot or say just a Sangiovese. So when you say red blend, it's like, wow, I can enjoy that because maybe it has a little Cab, maybe it has a little bit of Merlot, maybe it has quite a bit of Sangiovese. So I'm going to get everything rolled into one. Like with our Belnero, we have a beautiful Super Tuscan Belnero. You've got Sangiovese for those people who love the Brunello or the Chianti. You've got Cab and Merlot for those people who really love those varietals. And each of those grape varieties seems to come through in that wine Belnero. So you offer something to everyone.
Yeah, red blends especially have been such a big hit off premise. And I think we're just now starting to see it accepted at the on-premise level. So do you think that's something we're going to see growing?
Oh, I definitely believe that that's true. Some of the blends, most of our red blends are on the drier side. I see some of those red blends out there, especially those coming in from California, as sweetening up the pie a little bit. But all in all, I think red blends are definitely here to stay.
Yeah, and also with the rosé explosion, you might see a few different white wines, more than one Chardonnay on a wine list. Right now, you only see maybe one rosé on a wine list. Do you think that's going to change?
Oh, absolutely. It is changing. In fact, Le Cirque in New York City, this was a stat that they had out last year, said that they have something on the order of, in the summertime, 11 rosés by the glass.
Wow.
But guess what? They also now have at least 5 rosés by the bottle on their everyday wine list. So this is a trend that is going to continue. I've been doing a number of rosé presentations for different groups like SWE, Society of Wine Educators, American Wine Society, and it's amazing. I get a full room because everybody wants to know more about rosé. Rosés are making it easy for people to taste wine. And in fact, there are some articles that suggest that rosé is taking a bite out of those craft beer wine sales.
Wow.
The suggestion is that the younger guys are out there, and rather than having 2 or 3 beers at lunch, they're picking up a glass or 2 of rosé, and then they're better able to go back to work in the afternoon. So it really is interesting. It's not just women who are drinking those rosés, it's men as well.
I think men are feeling more comfortable in their masculinity. They can drink a pink wine.
Right. And pink goes with everything.
It really does.
You don't have to worry about, am I going to have seafood? Oh, yeah, rosé goes with seafood. Am I going to have a steak? Yeah, I could have a steak with rosé. All of those taboos are gone. Rosé can go with everything from a pasta to an appetizer to a steak. And if you want to, you can even enjoy it into dessert.
Yeah. And now with all these different options on the wine list, now that means the people, the front line, the servers, they need to be a little more knowledgeable about what's available.
Absolutely. And I think that key for service personnel is, first of all, to know their wines. If you don't know the wine, you aren't going to be able to sell it. There was a presentation that came out of the National Restaurant Association show last May in Chicago, and there was a session that was entitled Turn Your Staff into Beverage Superstars. It was hosted by hospitality expert Bob Brown, and he talked about suggest that as a server, you've got to go up and you have to not say, oh, would you like a glass of white wine today. Oh, we have a wonderful Sauvignon Blanc. We think that this is absolutely superb. I've tasted it myself. So you suggest to the consumer, you don't give them an opportunity to say no. You give them an opportunity to say yes. Which wine? Oh, and if you're not a Sauvignon Blanc drinker, we have, instead of our Natura Sauvignon Blanc from Chile, boy, we have a great Pinot Grigio called San Angelo from Italy. So you give them options, and you can take them around the world with these options. They say that also servers should take diners on a tour of the menu. I did a presentation last year in Naples, Florida for Cooper Hotels, and they run and operate a number of hotels throughout the United States. And they have a great team in Naples, Florida. They also run a restaurant called Shula's, and it's a big steakhouse. They have one server at that restaurant who is superb. He did everything right. The night before my presentation, we had dinner there. And this guy came up to us and he suggested, oh, would you like a wine by the glass? We have a sparkler. It happened to be our Maschio. He didn't know that I was with Banfi, but he suggested Maschio Prosecco. It was so interesting. And then he said, you know, if you like a still white, he suggested a Chard from California. He talked about a red wine from Spain that they had on the list. But he gave us suggestions and told us why he liked those wines so much. He was so attentive, but not too focused, but he brought us on a tour. He brought us on a tour first with the wines and then with the menu. He went through the menu and said, hey, this is a great appetizer. If you're looking for a main course, our filet of sole is superb tonight. If you're looking for a steak, I suggest the New York strip. He even went through dessert and told us if we wanted a souffle, it was going to take us 30, 35 minutes. So, you know, we could just order it early. But he finished with the power of, by the way, I suggest this. This is one of my favorite things on the menu. He had us sold. And that's the way to teach your staff and to train the staff. Don't ask, suggest. Take diners on a tour of the menu, and then the power of by the way, because if the customer isn't so sure, if they haven't given you an order, oh, by the way, this is my favorite wine. By the way, this is my favorite item on the menu. And it works 9 times out of 10. I can tell you, we took his suggestions.
Oh, absolutely. Whenever I encounter a server like that, I'm very excited. Unfortunately, I don't usually encounter servers like that. Usually it's someone who may not even know what wine is, or, you know, I think it's part of it is maybe they're just not confident enough to make the presentation. What kind of things do you do in a staff training to empower or even motivate someone to become a superstar like the one you just described?
What we do, number one, is there's a book that was written by a good friend of Banfi's, Joe Durocher. He passed away a few years ago, but he was a professor at New York University and then at the University of New Hampshire. And he co-wrote a book called The Wealthy Waiter. The first thing we do is when we talk to waiters, we suggest to them, as Joe suggested in his book, if you pour a glass of plain water on the table, you're not making anything in a tip for those glasses of plain water that are out there. However, if you are able to end up suggesting, say, sell 10 glasses of wine per shift at $8 per glass, 10 glasses of wine per shift is really nothing. You figure that your tips are maybe going to be 20% of that $8 glass of wine, and you multiply that by 5 shifts a week, and then say 48 weeks a year, because we're going to give you 4 weeks off for vacation. You can make just on those 10 glasses of wine that you're selling per week an additional $3,840. Guess what? If you sell 10 $50 bottles per shift, that's $100 in extra tips per week. Times 48 weeks, guess what? it is $24,000 extra in your pocket. $24,000. That makes sellers out of staff when they see their potential for income. And that's what we have to bring to the forefront, first and foremost. Everything else comes after that. Then we need to educate. And that's what we need to get people to do. Because as soon as you suggest and you don't ask, consumers are at the ready to take your suggestion. We want to be suggested to. We look at a menu, even for me, as you mentioned, I've been in this business for 40 years. I go into a restaurant and there are 150, 200, 500 wines on a wine list. Oh my God, it's daunting. Honestly, I don't want to take the time. I want somebody to do the work for me. I want to tell you what I'm going to enjoy for dinner, and then you come back to me with some ideas on what you think I might like. I'll give you some suggestions. I like white, I like red, I like Italy, I like Chile, I like Washington State. So from there, you can give me suggestions, and I'm not the only one who's saying that. Consumers all over are looking for that help, and that's the experience when I go into a restaurant. I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to have to work.
I think we all feel that way. That's why we're there.
Exactly.
We're not there to work, even though some of us are working when we're there.
Right.
So motivation of making $24,000 extra dollars a year, that's good motivation, at least get the interest of the staff. What is your next step in helping the staff feel more confident and feel better about suggesting some of these wines? What would you do next after that?
The next thing I would do is really a step back. Before I went in to do a staff training, I would ask to see a copy of their wine list. And what I would do is promote the wines, obviously, my wines on the wine list. But more importantly, I would promote the categories that are up. So we said earlier that, we see trends up in the rosé category. We see trends up in white blends, red blends. I would go out and I would promote those wines and say, hey, you guys are right on target. You have these Sauvignon Blancs. You have these wines, these rosés, these sparkling wines that are really trending very popular today and continue to trend up, and help them promote those wines that they have that fit the categories that the consumers are looking for. And then you need to write out just a bit of information, or keep one little bit of information about each of those wines. Ideally, what you want are stories to tell. So if I go in and I see Castello Banfi on the list, and I see a couple of my wines on the list, the first thing I want to do is tell our family story, because the people today, and it's millennials, but it's also my generation, we're looking for authenticity. We're looking for an experience when we go out. And I always say it's the art of one-upmanship. If you can tell me one story that I can bring back to my friends and family, I look like a god to them. So that's what people are looking for, that experience that makes them feel like, wow, this was worthwhile coming into this restaurant. And that goes with those stories. So you tell the Banfi family story. Then maybe I've got Col di Sasso on the wine list. Col di Sasso is a brand. What does it mean? It means hill of stone. And it refers to the fact that we have vineyards on our property in Montalcino that have a stony structure. Sasso is Italian word for stone. Col is an Italian word for hill. So hill of stone, the stony structure in the soil where those grapes are born. People come away and say, oh my God, that was a great story. I love it. So you have these stories that you can give people that they can relate to their customer, and it makes the wine that they taste more meaningful, and it actually gives them a place, a location of where those grapes are born.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And then would you recommend that the servers focus more on by the glass sales or bottle sales or both? Or
That's a really good question, and it does come up in staff training. When you have a two-top, you might want to focus more on by the glass sales, because we've seen more often than not with the two-top, you could have two people who want different things. So one person might want a white wine and the other person wants a red. So you don't want to push a bottle on them that they won't be happy about. And chances are they'll order 2 or maybe even 3 glasses of the wine that they're really enjoying. So if you've got a two-top, I would definitely suggest, more focusing, unless they know exactly that they both want to drink a red wine, and then you can suggest that. But I would focus on saying, okay, we have some wonderful wines by the glass. And I suggest to restaurants that they start going up the premium level with wines by the glass. No longer is it house red or house white. Everybody's looking for what they're referring to out there is premiumization. And it's, okay, I could spend $7 on this glass of wine, but guess what? If I spend 10 or 12 on that glass of Natura Sauvignon Blanc, I'm going to get a bigger bang for my buck, and I'm going to enjoy that wine a little bit better. If I'm looking for a Riesling, maybe everybody at the table doesn't want to enjoy Riesling, but I am a big Riesling fan. Maybe you see Pac Rim Dry or J Riesling on the by the glass list, and it pulls people in. Also, those by the glass wines should always also be available by the bottle, because that by the glass gets that consumer into trying that wine, and 9 times out of 10 they may order a whole bottle for the table, or the next time they come back in they definitely order that bottle. So those would be a couple of suggestions that I would have.
Yeah, and I'm always surprised when I see a wine by the glass and not by the bottle. I mean, I know the bottle's back there. Why can't you just sell it to me? Now, you mentioned premiumization, and we are definitely seeing consumers trending up, that they don't want $8 wines at retail. They want wines that are $15 and above. And I just read somewhere that people are now looking for wines that are $15 a glass, and even $20 a glass.
Absolutely.
Now, how do you kind of, as a server, how do you feel those people out? How do you steer them that way without, upselling is something that we want to do, but you don't want to do it in a disingenuous way. How do you figure out that's the customer and kind of steer them toward that higher level wine?
Well, when we say don't ask, suggest, you can suggest. My thought process is that you suggest wines in a couple of price categories, and especially if you've got some premium wines by the glass. I've been in restaurants recently where they have $50 wines by the glass, and it's amazing. But guess what? You might never have an opportunity to try that wine, because you're not going to spend $200 for the bottle or $250 for that bottle, and it's a great opportunity. And I see those higher end from 25 upwards wines by the glass really taking off. And if you get an idea from your customer as a server, what they like, what they enjoy. If somebody tells me that I like a Brunello, ding ding, wine by the glass Brunello is probably going to be $25 to $50 a glass. By the bottle, it's going to be more than $100, maybe upwards of $150, $200, depending upon what that is. So you've got to know your wines, and you also just have to ask the customer what they like, what style of wine they like. And when they tell you these bigger, more powerful wines, if they say, oh, I love red Burgundies, you know that price is no challenge, no problem.
Right. And if you run into a server who's looks like they're going to be a superstar or is very enthusiastic, and the staff training is over and they're looking for more information, where do you steer them to? What kind of
Well, as past president of Society of Wine Educators, I definitely steer them to Society of Wine Educators. In fact, the SWE has a program called Beverage Specialist, and it is not just about wine. It's about water, tea, you name it. It's beverage service, and it's a great course that you can actually do studies online, and you can buy a beverage specialist book from Amazon.com, and I steer them in that direction. And then when you're ready to take an exam, you go online, you take the test. It can even be open book, and you print off your certificate. So it really is a great program. So I start them with beverage specialists. If they know a little bit more about wine, I actually try to get them involved in the Society of Wine Educators Certified Specialist of Wine. But there are also other good organizations out there. At Banfi, we work very closely with Guild and the Court of Sommeliers, and they've got a first level, they've got advanced tiers where people can go to learn more about wine, wines from around the world. There's a program that's promoted by the Master of Wine. It's called WSET, and that's also available in the United States. So there are so many programs out there, but my favorite, of course, is Society of Wine Educators, because I think that it's the easiest to work with and the easiest to understand, especially if you want to get into more basic knowledge.
Yeah, today, if you want to learn, there really is no excuse not to learn. Mm-hmm. There's so many things accessible, especially with the internet and everything else. So let's go back a little bit. We're back in the restaurant. You've worked with Italian wines pretty heavily and exclusively at certain points throughout your career. How do you sell Italian wines in a non-Italian restaurant?
Well, the first thing that I talk about is how much value Italian wines offer, and that we have this incredible selection of styles and types and grape varieties that offer wines for every palate and every pocketbook. And I also suggest, and this is so apropos in a restaurant, Italian wines are meant to be enjoyed with food. That's when they show best. They've grown up with food. And you don't have to be in an Italian restaurant to enjoy Italian wines. I can have a burger with my Riunite Lambrusco, or I can have a spicy chicken wing with my Riunite Sangria. I can have a steak with my Castello Banfi Brunello di Montalcino, or our Sumis, or our Excelsis. Or I can have a simpler wine like Centenary for every day with a pasta dish. There are so many different things. And guess what? I went to a Thai restaurant yesterday, and they have noodles there. So that pasta dish could be in a Thai restaurant. And our Centenary Rosso, well, we have Centenary Bianco. We also have Centenary Rosé. They would be great in a Thai restaurant because they've got a lot of forward fruit. And my particular dish, I had something called drunken noodles. It was delicious. It would have been superb with one of those Centenary wines. It had a little touch of spice in it, so I actually could have put it with one of our Rieslings. It could be our sweet Riesling or a J Riesling, or, my go-to Riunite on ice. That's nice because there's a little bit more fruitiness and a nice bright vein of acidity that would pair very well with those spicy dishes. So you say pasta, it doesn't necessarily have to be an Italian restaurant.
Right. That's great. That's really great advice, because I hear that all the time too. And sometimes I go to a steakhouse and I want a red wine that'll go with my steak, my big fatty buttery steak. And then all I see are California cabs that I know are going to be too fat and not enough acidity. And I'm like, where is the Chianti or the Sangiovese based wine that's going to be perfect? And it's rarely there.
And also, when you just said that juicy steak, the best wine to have with a gorgonzola crusted steak is actually a Sartori or a Bolla Amarone. Oh my God, because there's so much richness because they've already partially dried the grapes, and those wines are so concentrated that if I have a gorgonzola crusted steak, I am looking for a great Amarone. And we have those in our portfolio too. If I'm just having a simple filet with little crust of butter on the top, boy, my Brunello di Montalcino is superb.
Yeah. When I want to crack open an Amarone, I never know what to really eat with it. But then I always go to a blue cheese.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yep.
It's because it can be such a heavy wine, although there are some that are not so heavy. All right. Let's finish up to help out some of the servers out there. Give me some of your favorite pairings that you would see in a restaurant, a typical restaurant that might work and might be good advice for servers.
Well, everything from, look, a lot of people are into salads. So there are so many salads on a list today. Everything from a salad that you can add shrimp to, that you can add chicken to, that you can add steak to. Guess what? It could be a white wine, but also think about rosé. That rosé category is moving up. So it could be our Centenay rosé with a steak salad. You could say you're looking at our unparalleled rosé from the Provence area in France with that shrimp salad. You could take our Centenay rosé and pair it with a Caesar salad. There are just so many opportunities out there. Moving on from that, I'm trying to think of a particular restaurant. You know what? If I'm going to a restaurant that has food on the spicier side, what I want to do is I want lighter, fresher, fruitier wines. Wines that are a little bit livelier on the palate, and sometimes wines that have a little bit of pizzazz. So I might even go to a rosé or a rosé sparkler that comes from the Veneto, or a Prosecco with a dish that has a little bit of spritz to it. And especially Proseccos that are listed as extra dry. Even though the name implies what you would think as being more dry, they are less dry than the dry wines. So we have a Prosecco extra dry from our Maschio portfolio, but also Prosecco extra dry from our Bolla portfolio. So I would look at those. When you're at lunch and you're looking for a sandwich, we have wines that run the gamut in our portfolio. Those white and red blends with a sandwich. A white blend, say, with a seafood sandwich. A red blend with, it could be a burger, or it could be a roast beef French dip sandwich. If you go up to the northeastern corridor, we have wonderful wines from the Veneto, like Valpolicella, Bardolino. We even have a Bardolino rosé called Chiaretto from Sartori. But Bolla has beautiful everyday drinking Valpolicella's, Bardolinos, Suaves that are so typical of that area. And they go so very well with lighter styled dishes. It could be that simple burger, but it could be a pasta dish at an Italian restaurant, or it could be any other sandwich that's on the menu. And then you move on to main courses. It could be a chicken dish. Our chicken dishes, we have a beautiful Pinot Grigio that is born under the Tuscan sun called San Angelo. And you can have a chicken dish that has a little bit of spice, and it absolutely marries with our San Angelo, because what makes San Angelo unique from Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio that comes comes from other places in the world, is that most places where Pinot Grigio, which is the same grape variety, where those grapes grow, tend to be cooler climates. We've got the heat of the Tuscan sun, which brings out the luscious character of Pinot Grigio in our wine. And it makes that wine more mouth-filling. Nothing wrong from Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigios that come from other parts of the world. We produce many of those, but they tend to be more laser-like on the palate. So maybe you want to pair a lighter dish with that. But with the San Angelo, you can have, your expectation can be something that's richer tasting, that has maybe more sauce, if you will, more of a cream sauce. Americans, we love cream sauces. A little touch of tomato in that cream sauce, and we fall in love with it. And that marries very well with wines like San Angelo. But then you can move up. You can move up to richer tasting reds like Rosso di Montalcino, like our Belnero. We have super Tuscan reds who, in our portfolio, stand to attention on your palate. And they definitely go very well with lamb dishes, with beef, veal dishes, pork dishes. We have wines, as I said, that fit every palate and every pocketbook.
That's quite a list. When you do staff trainings, do you ever involve the chef?
Absolutely. What we like to do with the staff training is ask the chef to actually prepare a couple of dishes if they can. Normally, our staff trainings are done prior to the beginning of shift. And especially if it's in late afternoon, they do lay out food for the servers because they want them to know what's on the menu for that evening. And what we normally do is, even if they're not tasting the wine, we take the idea of those dishes and we ask the chef what the ingredients are, and then we suggest pairings based on what the specials are for the evening.
Yeah, so there's a lot of planning involved.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's say you have a sales rep who's never done a training before, staff training. What are some tips that you can offer to help him or her?
There was an article earlier this year in Wine Spectator, and there was a young man by the name of John McDaniel. He's wine director of Gage Hospitality out of Chicago. And he said that his hope and his prediction for this year is that we get back to basics. He is so on target. What I suggest is the keep it simple, stupid principle, the KISS principle. You have to be comfortable with what you're doing. You have to start out with the basics. So if you're going in and you're presenting, you've got 10 wines on the list, and you're presenting those 10 wines, come in with a sheet that you've already prepared that lists those 10 wines, but guess what? More importantly, you should have a list of at least 3 or 4 dishes that each of those wines marries well with, and you should be able to give that information to the server, but it should be basic information. We need to let them know what the grape varieties are in the wine, and we need to let them know what the taste of the wine is. We don't have to tell them alcohol. We don't have to tell them pH. What the heck is that? All we need to do is give them the basics, and we need to get back to the basics. And as a distributor, as a salesperson, you need to have the basics down. You need to know a little bit about the country or countries that you're talking about. You don't have to know everything, but give them a few tidbits that they can use, those servers can use, and they can look like gods in front of their customers. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but maybe it's as simple as, saying in Europe they've got the 85% rule, that if you use the name of one grape variety on a label, the wine has to have at least 85% of that grape variety. And that's something simple. Everybody knows, or let's put it this way, everybody can remember. You don't have to talk about the wine laws, the categories, what they mean. But if somebody asks you a question about the wine laws, just say, hey, as you go up the pyramid of wine laws, it's not a guarantee of quality in Italy or in the United States or in France or in Chile. It's a further guarantee of authenticity. And as you you go to each and every country and their wine laws come into play, you have differences. And what you do is, as you move up, what you have are more rules and regulations that come into play for the production of those wines. Again, just that keep it simple premise. Just give them a little bit of information that they can understand. Look, we do 2-day seminars, and those are not the seminars that we're going to do for staff. Sometimes staff, I get 15, 20 minutes, and you've got to give them down and dirty the basic information that they can use to better sell your wines.
Yeah, and that's really good advice, especially when you consider there are so many wines in the world, and I would say about 99% of the population, the consumers, they don't really care. They just want a wine that they're going to enjoy. You are going to have those people that are really into wine and really studying it, and they might want to like trip you up, but the rest of them,
it's getting back to the basics, but most importantly, as we said very early on, it's telling the story. Facts tell, but stories sell.
And that's a great way to end.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Sharron. All right.
Thank you for listening to WineBiz 360. Do you have a sales story, question, or want to be a guest on the show? Visit winebiz360.com and let us know.